thank you for returning to the Exporter Sports Talk Show live on Raw Radio. Once again, I am your host, the NFL Exporter. Now, the Indianapolis Colts are one of the teams in the AFC who we saw as being a potential threat to taking out the Denver Broncos or the New England Patriots, who were the preseason favorites coming in to represent the AFC conference this year in the Super Bowl. Right now, the Colts are 1-2. They suffered a tough road defeat at Denver in Week 1, 31-24. They let a game slip through their hands in Week 2. You know that they played on Monday Night Football against the Philadelphia Eagles. We're up with about 5 minutes to go in that game, well within kicker Adam Vinatieri's field goal range. They elected to throw the football on 3rd and 5, which ended up being intercepted. Philadelphia was able to score and tie that game and eventually win it in regulation 30-27. The Colts, however, were able to rebound with an impressive victory over the hapless Jaguars nonetheless, 44-17. And in that game, quarterback Andrew Luck, as we talked about in our fantasy section, had his best day as a pro, completing 31 of 37 passes for 370 yards and 4 touchdowns. And so that was very impressive. This week, the Colts are back home for a home game against the Tennessee Titans. In this one, we certainly like the Colts to win this one as well, just are playing a better brand of football. Now, obviously, the Titans are coming into this one with a possibility that their starting quarterback, Jake Locker, may be out, but he's been very inconsistent nonetheless. Tennessee is really struggling to run the football, just don't have the playmakers in the passing game. Their defense is playing very well, though, trying to keep them in ball games. Last week, they did a great job at Cincinnati. They held quarterback Andy Dalton to 169 passing yards, really stopped up the run. And so we're going to see how this one works out. Nonetheless, we like Indianapolis winning this one at home. We'll go with the Colts 24, the Titans 13. Now, we have a special guest on our show today. We're going to talk some Indianapolis Colts football. We've got in Kevin Bowen. He is a writer for the Indianapolis Colts for Colts.com. Why don't everyone out there go ahead and give Kevin a warm round of applause. Thank you very much. And Kevin, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Lance. Thanks for having me.
Sure, not a problem. And so we're going to go right in and definitely hear from a source right directly from Indianapolis in that Colts locker room, fresh off a 44-7 victory, at Jacksonville. We knew that Indianapolis was chomping at the bit all week after losing that tough one at home against the Philadelphia Eagles. So to start off, Kevin, why don't you tell us what is the mindset and mentality of this team? They got off to a 1-2 start, but lost to 2 worthy opponents at Denver. Lost a tough one at home there against the Philadelphia Eagles. Were able to rebound against Jacksonville and have Tennessee coming up this week. So what's the mindset? How's things looking as far as the team's confidence and mentality moving forward?
Yeah, Sunday was definitely huge for this team. They talked all week following that loss to the Eagles, a game that really got away, up 20-6 midway through the third quarter. You really couldn't have scripted a better start to that Monday night game in Week 2. That one got away late. You had some costly turnovers, a few questionable calls that I think were kind of eating at this team. And then you're coming off a short week. You're going down to Jacksonville, their home opener, and you really, again, couldn't have put together then a better game down in Jacksonville. Yes, it is the Jaguars, but to be up 30-0 on the road against any NFL team just doesn't happen week in and week out. So that's exactly what the doctor ordered in terms of what the Colts needed to get their first win in 2014, get a divisional win. Again, that's 8 straight wins now the Colts have had against the AFC South teams. They're only a game back in the AFC South. I know we're only in 3 weeks into the season, but still, I think it's just from a confidence standpoint, get the ball rolling. Now you're in the midst of 4 games in 19 days. You have 2 more divisional opponents during that stretch. So I think this is vital just from a confidence standpoint, and it was a totally different atmosphere in here on Monday compared to what we saw last week after the Eagles lost.
Certainly. Now, let me ask you this. Looking at the rest of the division, the Texans right now are 2-1. Coming off a road loss at the Giants. I know that running back Arian Foster was unable to go in that one. They have a new quarterback over there in Ryan Fitzpatrick. You look at the Tennessee Titans, things not looking too promising right now. They're trying to get things figured out with their running game. Jake Locker in that passing game has been inconsistent. Have a pretty tough defense in Tennessee, though. And then obviously the Jaguars are a team that right now just don't have the talent to be able to put out on the football field to be competitive. How do the Colts like their chances at winning the division again this year? And with a division that is rather weak, is it hard for them not to get overconfident or stay focused, considering the talent level amongst the other teams in their division?
I think this is going to be a lot different than what we saw last year. The Colts really got off to a pretty solid start. The rest of the division, again, was very poor throughout the regular season. The Colts clinched the division with 3 weeks left in the regular season. They were the first team to clinch the division last year. I don't think we're going to see that this year for a couple of reasons. One, you dug yourself an early hole going 0-2. And I think Houston is here to stay in the sense that they're going to be right around 500, if not a little better, throughout the course of the season. Again, they had a tough loss up to New York this past week, but they're going to be playing on paper an easier schedule this year, whereas the Colts, again, are playing the divisional champs throughout the AFC. The good news for the Colts is they did get arguably probably the 2 hardest games of the season have already been played, in the sense of you've already traveled to Denver, you played Philly at home, you only have 2 playoff teams the rest of the schedule, and both those teams, Cincinnati and New England, you get them at Lucas Oil Stadium. Now, at the same time, again, I still think Houston is a team that's going to be there. I think that defense is going to kind of carry them throughout the year as long as Ryan Fitzpatrick manages the game and keeps them in games. I think they're going to be there at the end of the season, if not challenging for the AFC South, maybe on the fringe of a wild card spot. Tennessee is kind of the unknown factor, I think, in this division. The Jake Locker injury was a surprise, I think, to many. Again, he's a guy that just had trouble staying healthy. Looks like he might be on the mend this week if he can't go. Then Charlie Whitehurst, their backup, is going to go. So Jacksonville, I think, is still a couple years away. I think that this Colts team going 0-2 out of the gate, this division just isn't as easy as maybe it was last year when you did go 6-0 against your division. Again, the Colts are in the midst of playing 3 division games in 19 days. So right now, 1-2, sitting in the game behind the Texans. That could totally change a couple weeks from now. The Colts travel to Houston 2 weeks from Thursday for their Thursday night game. Again, last year that was a thriller on Sunday Night Football. The Colts came back down 24-3 and won that game. So I think they have a stranglehold on the division from last year. I do think the Colts are the favorite, but by no means is this going to be a division that I think is wrapped up by week 14 like it was last year.
Definitely. And one thing you just mentioned, I wanted to talk about that. You mentioned that this week for Tennessee, whether it's Jake Locker or if he's out, Charlie Whitehorse. Let's talk about the defense a little bit, because I know that they don't have really any big name guys. Obviously, the big loss came this year to outside linebacker Robert Mathis, who led the NFL in sacks last year. That was a big loss there. Obviously, with the new NFL drug policy, he was suspended 4 games. He would have been able to play this past Sunday in Jacksonville if they would have opted to let him on the football field. Unfortunately, tore his Achilles while serving that suspension. So my questions are, number one, how do the Colts plan on compensating for the loss of Mathis and generating a pass rush? And then talk to us a little bit about this defense, who I mentioned, not many big names as far as just like the general public. Of course, people inside of football circles are familiar with big free agent pickup DeQuell Jackson coming over. I like you guys adding him to the middle of that second unit to add some stability there. Eric Walden's been a fit guy since day one. You have LaRon Landry. You brought over Vontae Davis. But again, even those guys, maybe to the average football fan aren't known. So how do the Colts get it done on the defensive side of the football?
Well, replacing 11 years and 111 some sacks is nothing that you can just wake up out of bed and have a pass rush. You got to do it in creative ways, and we saw that finally on Sunday. And I think that's kind of the biggest thing going forward is where does that pass rush come from? It's not going to be one guy. You mentioned Eric Walden. He's had a very strong start to the year. Bjorn Werner, the first-round pick in 2013. From a number standpoint, he hasn't had I think, the type of sacks that people would like to see. But again, you got to get interior pressure from your front three. Again, the Colts play a 3-4 scheme. You got to get guys blitzing. Terrell Freeman is a leading tackler the past 2 years. He was kind of on the fringe of a Pro Bowl year last year. He's missed the past couple of weeks with a hamstring injury. It'll be interesting to watch if he can practice this week and maybe get back on the field. Arthur Jones is a big free agent pickup from the Ravens. When he was on the field last year for the Ravens only allowed 3.4 yards per carry when he was off the field. Baltimore allowed 4.6 yards a carry. He has a high ankle sprain, so he might be out for a couple of weeks. So the Colts are a little banged up in the front seven outside of Mathis. And again, Mathis' sacks speak for themselves. 19.5 last year, 8 forced fumbles. It was the timeliness of so many big plays. Seattle strip sack on Russell Wilson, 2 sacks on Colin Kaepernick. Everybody remembers the strip sack on Peyton Manning that led to a safety and really sparked the Colts win on Sunday Night Football last year against Peyton. But at the same time, it's the attention that I think Mathis garnered. Opposing offensive coordinators now aren't thinking, okay, I need to keep an extra skill guy in to chip 98 or make sure my running back knows where Mathis is lined up on every snap. So if the Colts can start to get a consistent pass rush, and they did that on Sunday much better. Again, they had 4 sacks. And they got a sack from every level of the defense. Laurent Landry, the guy that you mentioned, he had a sack. Jaquil Jackson, and the guy that you mentioned, also had a sack on Sunday. And so again, you had 1 sack in the first 2 weeks. You had 4 last week. Now is which Colts pass rush are we going to see going forward? Jacksonville's offensive line has struggled with injuries. They give up 13 sacks in the first 2 weeks. But now you're starting to play more conventional offenses. Peyton Manning and Denver do a great job of getting the ball out quickly. Philadelphia, you're so gap responsibility focused throughout the game, thinking, okay, if I'm out of my gap trying to spin my ears, I can get after the quarterback. Sean McCoy and Darren Sproles can go to the house in a blink of an eye. I mean, now that you're starting to play offenses that are more 7-step drop, that should allow the Colts pass rush to be a little more creative on third down to stay ahead of schedule. I think the Colts pass rush will start to see more what you saw against Jacksonville than what you saw the first 2 weeks of the season.
Okay, definitely sounds good. Let's go ahead and take it to the offensive side of the football. Of course, the past couple years, really since Andrew Luck has arrived there, have really struggled to run the ball consistently. So this is great to have you on the show because I myself and a lot of people out there are left to kind of just speculate or kind of guess what the issues are. Obviously, you guys brought over running back Trent Richardson from the Cleveland Browns. I gave him a pass last year coming over a couple games into the season. Obviously not easy to gel and get chemistry with an offensive line. He needs some time to do the learning curve. We see veteran Ahmad Bradshaw definitely has proved to be a good pickup for this team. You guys lost Donald Brown, a hard runner, and a veteran in the offseason. So let's talk about the running game a little bit. It's definitely has struggled, has not been consistent. No matter what quarterback it is, I can name a couple quarterbacks around the league right now, and particularly Aaron Rodgers, not having a running game behind him that is really causing some extra pressure on him to provide. So why don't you tell us, is it more of the running backs? Is it the offensive line not providing holes? What has been the issue with the Colts running game the last couple years not being as effective as I'm quite sure they'd like it to be?
I think it's just injuries up front. You've had so much change within the interior offensive line in particular. Now this year, the Colts running game has showed some promise through the first couple games. 169 yards against the Eagles in week 2. That was your best effort in nearly a year. I followed that up with over 140 yards on Sunday against Jaguars. So we're starting to see some of that run game focus that this offense is striving for. You want to be balanced. You want to be in January. You want to be able to rely on the run game and not force Andrew Luck to have to chuck the ball 40 to 50 times a game. We saw last year in the playoffs, teams that won and teams that went far had that ability to be multidimensional, to not force your hand from a defensive standpoint. The Colts ran again very effectively on Monday night against the Eagles. Followed that up again against the Jaguars on Sunday. They're the only team in the NFL right now with 2 backs over 150 yards in Ahmad Bradshaw and Trent Richardson. So again, it's having that continuity up front. Colts had the same starting lineup for all 3 games so far in 2014 on the offensive line. You're starting to see how this offense can really flourish. We saw the running game again on Monday night against the Eagles really establish yourself in getting that lead, and then on Sunday, where the running game maybe takes a backseat, even though they still had 140 yards, Andrew Luck has arguably his best game as an NFL player. So it's that, multiplicity, being versatile. That's what Pep Hamilton, one side of his team. Ahmad Bradshaw has been just, I think when you watch him run, you kind of forget this is a guy coming off a serious neck injury, and yet he just runs so angry with that physicality that I think teammates feed off of. Richardson's vision looks much better in 2014. He's had some great cutback runs. Both guys are catching the ball out of the backfield. So early on, this is the type of run game that I think Colts fans, again, haven't seen in years past, but this is definitely something that Pep Hamilton, the offensive coordinator, and Chuck Pagano want, because, again, come playoff time, got to be able to win in multiple ways, especially if you are on the road having to travel maybe to a New England or a Denver and play in less than ideal conditions.
Now, in regards to the passing game, you just talked about how the running game definitely, at least through 3 games this season, has certainly looked better. You have to get it done by committee. You see that kind of becoming the way of the NFL right now, especially with Ahmad Bradshaw's ability to catch out the backfield. Has had 3 receiving touchdowns in the last 2 games. But let's talk about Andrew Luck in that passing game. As you mentioned, he's certainly continuing to make strides to become that elite quarterback. Really picked apart the Jaguars this past weekend, and I'm like you. I don't take it for granted. A lot of times people can underestimate opponents, or you still have to execute at the end of the day. And for him to come out and have that type of game against the Jaguars on the road, after a tough victory, certainly speaks volumes to the type of character and a team leader this guy is. But, this year he's got a lot of extra weapons. Last year had to play without Dwayne Allen, had to play the second half of the season without Reggie Wayne. Hakeem Nicks was not there. You're looking at this year now, you got a healthy Wayne. You bring in Hakeem Nicks. You have a healthy Dwayne Allen back to go along with Kobe Fleener and T.Y. Hilton. I really think that kind of helped Luck get some chemistry with those guys, with those other players out or not there last year. So with the 5 weapons in the passing game, you have a back who can catch out the backfield, and Ahmad Bradshaw. Man, how high is the ceiling for Andrew Luck, and how much can we expect this pass game, especially if the running game is not as effective? Is this a group of receivers? Is this a quarterback who's ready to put the offense on his back if they have to become a little bit more pass heavy in their attack and approach?
Definitely. I thought before the year started that this team had the skill guys to be a top 5 offense. For me, it was that the offensive line can protect, can give Andrew Luck some time to throw the football, and they've done that this year, according to Pro Football Focus. They're the number 1 ranked pass blocking unit so far in the NFL after 3 weeks. And again, you've mentioned all those weapons, and it's one of those things where I remember in the offseason, so many people asked me, well, fantasy football this, fantasy football that, and I kind of shied away from taking any Colts skill players, because I thought Andrew Luck does such a great job of spreading the ball around. Those guys might not have the single big game that you see from a Des Bryant or an A.J. Green or, some of those top flight wideouts. And, we saw last week against the Jaguars, 9 different guys caught at least 2 passes from Andrew Luck. It's just a remarkable number. 4 of them wideouts, 3 tight ends, 2 running backs. So it's not like he's just focusing on one specific skill group. Tight ends were targeted heavily on Sunday. And Bradshaw and Richardson have been great threats out of the backfield. And everyone knows when you have 3,000-yard wideouts in Reggie Wayne, T.Y. Hilton, and Hakeem Nicks, it's kind of the who's who of who you're trying to take away as an opposing defensive coordinator. And Luck, definitely does a great job just purely finding the open man, not trying to force the ball necessarily to certain guys. Reggie Wayne and T.Y. Hilton are still the biggest targets for this team. But Andrew Luck has thrown 9 touchdown passes in 2014, and none of them have gone to Wayne or Hilton. As if he leads all quarterbacks in fantasy points. And again, to not have either your top wideouts catch a touchdown, pretty interesting stat. But he was very efficient on Sunday, 31 of 37, over 350 yards, and passer rating of 140. That's a career high for him. Again, that is the type. Again, Sunday was the exact blueprint that this passing offense can look like if need be, and if teams are going to put 7, 8, 9 guys in the box to try to take that run game away. Andrew Luck just showed what he can do. So again, I think this offense does have the chance to be a top 5 unit. And Andrew Luck showed that, again, if need be, he can throw the ball and throw it very, very effectively. And that was a big game, I think, for Andrew just after the first 2 weeks of the season. He had that final drive in Denver on a 4th and 6 play. He kind of forced it a little bit to Reggie Wayne. He had T.Y. Hilton open. Who knows if the Colts maybe convert that? Do they go down, force that game into overtime? Earlier in that second half comeback, they had a 4th and goal to 1. They got stuffed on. Andrew took full blame for that, trying to quarterback sneak it. And then against the Eagles, everybody saw the late game pick. Whether it was holding or not against T.Y. Hilton or not, I think Luck still knows he probably should have thrown the ball in that situation. So that was a big game Sunday for him, just for a confidence standpoint. He really put it all together, and I think you could argue that was his best game as an NFL player.
Yeah, definitely. And, you see that, I've seen that with the top offenses in the NFL. It's not just about one guy anymore. It certainly is about having a full cast to support. Like you said, it gives quarterbacks and like Andrew Luck an opportunity to pick his matchups. Now you can't just come out and say, well, I'm going to take out Wayne today or Hilton, and there's no other options. Now it's a situation you have to pick your poison, and Luck has more than enough viable options in the passing game to choose from. So yeah, I totally agree with you. From a fantasy football standpoint, even T.Y. Hilton, you mentioned it in the earlier part of the preseason. He mentioned that about having the 3,000-yard receivers or 3 elite receivers on the team. So I think we'll continue to see that on a week in and week out basis. It could be a different Colt wide receiver leading in yardage and touchdowns on a week in and week out basis. And I certainly think that is something that proves very well for Andrew Luck, not having his options limited. And you like to have depth as well in case somebody does get injured or, trying to limit the snap count. I know we all love fantasy football, but these teams are thinking about the long haul and trying to win a championship. So certainly bodes well for him. Now let's talk about real quick before we let you go, Kevin, about how serious a threat that the Colts can be to the New England Patriots or the Denver Broncos. Now, obviously, both of those teams right now are still, it's early in the season, so you see New England's offense right now really struggling to get on track. You think they're going to do that at some point. For the Broncos, their offense hasn't been as sharp as they would like it to be. And from the defensive side of the football, they've made just enough plays. Certainly those playmakers that they brought over in the offseason haven't made their presence quite felt to the point that Denver has actually came out and dominated somebody. So, in regards to those second-tier teams right now, I think that everybody would have, Denver and New England as the cream of the crop. But I think right there in that second tier is Indianapolis, Cincinnati, and San Diego. Those 3 teams certainly seem to be the teams who are chomping at the bit to possibly knock them off. So why don't you tell me, obviously, if they can stay healthy, how does Indianapolis feel about their chances potentially having to go to New England or Denver to compete for a championship?
Well, that's the thing. I think that's the biggest area where I think fans have questions about, can you go in back-to-back weeks to a Denver, to a New England, or Cincinnati again? I think is the X factor in the AFC. How good are they? Is that 3-0 record and really dominant in 2 of those 3 games? How good are they? Can Andy Dalton take that next step in January? I think is the biggest question that will be unanswered, of course, until we reach the playoffs. This team, health-wise, again, Colts fans out there are knocking on wood because last year you lost 5 offensive starters. You still made the playoffs, even without Reggie Wayne and, a slew of offensive weapons. Still put up, that record comeback against the Chiefs. We're in that game against New England late until Garrett Blount ripped off a big touchdown run. So ideally, the Colts would not only win the division, but try to secure a bye and get at least, one of those later home games at Lucas Stadium. Again, you dug yourself an early hole at 0-2, so there's a ton of football left to be played. I think the Colts are a serious AFC contender. The biggest thing right now is just proving it out there. And again, you're going to face Cincinnati. They're going to come to Lucas Oil Stadium on October 19th. You bring New England in here a month later for a Monday night or for a Sunday night game as well. So you're going to have chances to prove yourself. And I think coming out of those first 2 games of the year, when you are 0-2 and you hear all those stats about teams that fall 0-3, this amount of teams make the playoffs, and you start, second guessing yourself almost and wondering, have we dug ourselves too big of an early hole? The silver lining was you really felt that Philadelphia game got away. And again, that's one of the best teams in the NFL. You felt like that you had that game, almost really had it wrapped up, and you gave it away late. And even in that Denver game, you dug yourself a huge early hole, but made a typical comeback that the Colts have grown so accustomed to over the past 2 years, and did that on the road. So there was some silver lining to take away from those 2 early games against, I think, 2 of the better teams in the NFL. I don't think there's any question that Denver and Philly are not only going to be in the playoffs, but are serious Super Bowl contenders. I think that this Colts team does consider themselves up there in the AFC. I think there's still some hurdles to go over. Getting consistency throughout the regular season, really getting a stranglehold on this AFC South. And ideally, if you're able to string some wins together, get that domino effect rolling, this team hopefully will be able to challenge not only for an AFC South title, but again maybe trying to secure one of those top couple seeds. So you are bringing one of those teams in January into Lucas Oil Stadium and not having to go through the gauntlet of going to Denver, to Foxborough, or to Cincinnati to get to Glendale for the Super Bowl.
Definitely. All right, and I will say this too as well about the Colts. When you have a quarterback like Andrew Luck, the team, I'm certainly quite sure, feels that they're in every football game. You certainly have seen Luck have enough comeback victories, and even the games that they've come up short, like at Denver this year. Like I said, when you have a quarterback like that, where he's always keeping your team in the football game, certainly builds confidence for the rest of the group. All right, Kevin, well, thank you so much for coming on to the show today. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, that was Kevin Bowen, writer for Indianapolis Colts, thecolts.com. I'm going to just let him leave any websites or information. You can make sure to follow him on Twitter or however he gets it in, and we'll certainly be welcoming Kevin back to the show. Hopefully he can check in with us every couple weeks, and we can keep it going, talking about this Colts team, who obviously is in line to make a playoff push if they can stay healthy. Go ahead, Kevin. Maybe just let them know, your website, your Twitter, any information where they can keep up with you writing for the Colts.
Yeah, Lance, it's Colts.com is the team's official website that I produce content for. And then on Twitter, it's at KBowen, Bowen, Colts. So at KBowen, Colts, and then Colts.com is where you can find my content. So yeah, I appreciate joining you guys this morning, and I'd love to do it again.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Kevin. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So once again, that was Kevin Bowen, writer for thecolts.com. We thank him for coming on to the show. We'll make sure to have him back in a couple weeks and continue to check in with us on the status of the Indianapolis Colts, who are right now 1-2 and hosting the Tennessee Titans this upcoming Sunday for the big game. Once again, I am the NFL Exporter. You are listening to Raw Radio, the Exporter Sports Talk Show. Stay tuned.